Good afternoon, and thank you for joining this webinar. We'll give attendees just 2 more minutes to arrive, and then we'll get started. Stay tuned. Okay, good afternoon, and thank you for joining this webinar discussing what retailers need to know about the machine learning uprising in advertising. Following this discussion, we'll have some time for Q&A, so please take advantage of that. You don't have to wait until the end to submit your questions. You can add them at any point during the session through the questions tab on the GoToWebinar platform. Everyone registered will also get a recording of this webinar in their inbox tomorrow, should you miss anything or want to revisit any part of the conversation. So today's guest is Matt Collins. Matt Collins is the Director of Product Marketing for MNTN, which provides advertising software for brands to drive measurable conversions, revenue, site visits, and more through the power of television. Collins has over 15 years of B2B marketing leadership experience, the last 8 of which he spent in ad tech with stints at Roku, Simulmedia, and Ampush. In addition, Collins spent over 8 years in mobile development and partner marketing at Nokia and Microsoft. He also worked in the video game industry and has marketed some of the world's top entertainment brands, including Monopoly, Dungeons and Dragons, Dragon Ball Z, and Roller Coaster Tycoon. And with that, we'll get started. Matt, take it away.
All right, thanks so much, Christina. It's great to be here. We're going to cover a far-ranging set of topics, but all of it in the realm of AI. I'm just moving my screen around here a little bit. So my hope is that if nothing else, the audience today will come away with an understanding of how artificial intelligence is changing both the art and science of marketing. And we'll talk a little bit about that specifically through 4 lenses. We're going to talk a bit about how artificial intelligence, or AI, is changing the advertising landscape at a high level. And we're going to specifically focus on how those changes are accruing to the benefit of retailers. Then we're going to lean forward a little bit into how AI is reshaping and helping us reimagine the creative process and how we bring our ad creative to life. And we'll finish with a view to how we can avoid some of the downsides of AI, some of the risks associated with artificial intelligence, And I assure you that we will come out of this today with an understanding that no matter how this is all developing and how we deploy artificial intelligence, boy, there's sure an important role for people to continue to play. This is not going to render humans obsolete. Let's begin, though, with the definition of artificial intelligence. Just what is it? Bill Gates penned an article very recently in which I think he appropriately entitled, "The Age of AI Has Begun." I highly recommend it. And he defines artificial intelligence this way. He refers to it as a model that's created to solve a specific problem or provide a particular service. Now that leaves a lot of other inputs and considerations, I think, unsaid. And there are two that I want to call attention to in particular that are really important for understanding how artificial intelligence really works. It relies on two inputs in order to operate. The first is artificial intelligence requires a lot of data in the form of text, in the form of music, video, photography, images, in order to be able to synthesize and produce something new. And then secondly, it needs a learning model so that it understands how to digest all that information, again, in the service of being able to take all of that pre-existing information and use it to generate something entirely new. Artificial intelligence is starting to creep up as a capability that's affecting more and more of our lives, and its power is increasing all the time as computing power increases. Now, I get excited about this for, I think, what was probably a fairly silly reason. I've been working, as Christina said, I've been working in advertising technology for the last 8 years, and I've been in tech marketing my entire career. And there are not a lot of subjects that come up in my day-to-day work where I could actually, at the end of my day, get on the phone with my parents and have a conversation with them, and where they'd be able to follow along with what it is that I do. But artificial intelligence has so entered the mainstream that it's the kind of thing that is a fair game for conversations at parties, at get-togethers, and certainly with phone calls with my parents. And I can talk to them and they can more or less follow along. And many of you have probably used artificial intelligence, even just to goof around, whether it's prompting ChatGPT to give you some copy for an email, or for, as we did in the office here at Mountain, gosh, a couple months ago, we're relying on it to send playful messages to one another on Slack, or finding maybe practical ways to use it at work. It's really popping up everywhere. And certainly the advertising space and for retail, it's no different. There are two areas, though, in particular that I want to focus on for artificial intelligence, and that is its role in how we're thinking about the changes to media operations, the mechanics of how we ply our craft, and then also a look ahead to how it's affecting and going to continue to affect the way we think about creative. Let's frame this, though, in the context of where retail is today. And the challenges that I'm articulating here are by no means exhaustive, but they do come through in the retailer advertisers who rely on Mountain. The first is customer acquisition. And this is really a product of the agendas of the CEO, the CFO, and the CMO all merging around the importance of driving outcomes, measurable outcomes with every marketing investment. And really, there's no better way of being able to show proof of performance than to be able to say to the big boss, here are the customers I acquired with my marketing campaign. Another big challenge that's coming to the industry is the need to expand product lines. And certainly over the last 3 years, with supply chain disruptions, companies have come to realize that they can't depend necessarily on even one or two very popular product lines. They need to expand to be able to shift and be flexible in the event that demand changes rapidly for a particular service or supply changes rapidly for a particular product or service. And then third, with the explosion of ad channels and especially new ways to deploy digital video, there's an increased need for creative. And it's no surprise that 95% of retailers are indicating that for 2023, connected TV advertising will play a significant role in their advertising strategies. Now, the good news is that artificial intelligence is already making advertising life easier, and not just for retailers, but for advertising in general. The tools that AI enables are making the work, the mechanics of advertising faster, more precise, and just less cumbersome overall. And to illustrate this, I'll share a bit of my own experience. You know, when I first started out marketing those video games that Christina mentioned, I felt very fortunate that I was able to very easily make a business case to spend on linear TV advertising to promote titles like Dragon Ball Z or Roller Coaster Tycoon. And so I, in my career, have been fortunate to spend millions of dollars on linear TV. And in every one of those instances, the process, the mechanics of making linear TV come to life were pretty familiar. And it went something like this. I'd prepare a brief that would articulate a goal. It would articulate a target audience, timing, budget, the kind of creative strategy that we would be bringing to bear in terms of the tonality that we wanted to execute. And then I would share that with my media agency, and they would say, great, Matt, we hear you. Give us 2 or 3 weeks, we'll come back to you with a plan. And they needed 2 to 3 weeks to do that, not because they were bad at what they did, or they were slow, or they had, they just were busy. They needed 2 or 3 weeks because they would take my plan, my budget, my target audience, all those other inputs, and then they would call the networks, the TV networks that had the audiences and the inventory that were appealing to that campaign. And they'd have to figure out what was available. There were people on the other end, on the sell side of this equation, working for the networks, who would have to then dig into their inventory and their availability to see what they could sell. And they would have to do this across every single network that they talked to, and then assemble it in a way that matched up with my budget and my time frame. And they would come back to me and they'd review it, and I'd say, great, I like this part. I would like to see changes over here. Can you do that? And they'd say, Matt, no problem. And they'd go back and say, hey, we're going to need another 10 to 14 days to work on these changes. And they would go back and the mechanics would repeat. And that's just the way that it had to be, because there weren't machines. We didn't have the digital plumbing and wiring to facilitate that. Now, artificial intelligence is making this so much more easy. And specifically, I'll just give some more examples of how radically that's changed. Programmatic solutions, which, by the way, I'm just going to shorthand that a bit because programmatic is still a relatively new term that may or may not be clear to others. For this purpose, just think of it as technology that automates. Technology-enabled automated solutions are using algorithms, and all an algorithm is a rule or process for being able to take very complex inputs to make decisions. And those things are coming together to automate so much of the buying and selling of digital advertising, including connected television. And here, an example that happens every single day at Mountain and at other places too, is that an advertiser will come forward with a budget of X, time frame of Y, a goal of Z, creatives A, B, C, and D, and they'll say, hey, we want to be able to meet a particular goal with this campaign and all those other inputs. They feed it into the machine, and rather than taking weeks, which, by the way, there are, that method of buying, which I described, it was highly manual. That's not just the way that it was. In many places, it's still the way that it is. But at places like Mountain and others, where so much automation has now taken over, that process of being able to take all those inputs and then consider what could be billions, if not trillions, of different campaign alternatives or options, and be able to recommend the best one, can now happen in a matter of minutes or hours compared to days, weeks, or in some cases months, depending on the number of revisions. And it can do that at scale. It can do that for not just one advertiser, but many, many different advertisers, considering all kinds of different inputs and considerations. And the result is, boy, has it taken a lot of the painful manual process that all of us had to live with out of the equation. And it's giving advertisers just so much more options and nimbleness and time back to focus on other things. And it's not just impacting what happens at the onset of a campaign. this approach of using technology, artificial intelligence, to operate a campaign also affects how we think about changing campaigns on the fly to make them better, or optimization. Mountain connected television advertising, or Mountain's approach to connected television advertising, is to really transform the medium into the third scalable performance channel alongside paid search and social. And we're able then to take campaigns on the fly and review 52 different factors, things like ad placement, the streaming publisher that is carrying that ad, previous performance, both of that advertiser and other advertisers like it, and many, many more, and process all that in real time to say, hey, what changes should we make to this? And Mountain's executing changes hundreds of thousands of times a day to find the best possible opportunity for an advertiser's campaign to reach and convert more users, and to be able to do it faster, to be able to do it more in real time, and to give feedback to the advertisers about how this all developing and how it's all performing. So let's bring it back then to retailers. So we talked about retailer challenges, including a need for customer acquisition to be able to drive performance. Well, solutions that can work that quickly and to be optimized towards a bottom of funnel outcome really becomes much more valuable. In an environment where retail advertisers are considering a proliferation to their product lines and supporting more and more brands, and needing to perhaps be flexible about their support among those brands, and shifting advertising dollars from one that might be performing well to one that is performing even better, or shifting advertising dollars from a product that might be in low supply and therefore is sold out, to one where there's plentiful supply, requires agility and being able to react, and or in some cases proactively change in ways that the old methodology just simply can't accommodate. The notion that a retailer can afford, under all of the conditions that are really driving the business and making it go faster, the notion that they have to wait 6 to 8 weeks to get a TV plan back, or any media plan back, to execute is just sort of anathema now. They need real-time tools and speed, and quite frankly, that sort of managing that complexity and that speed together just simply can't be done unless you have either automation or an army of people to help you, and certainly automation is accessible and available right now. Now, success in connected television advertising is not just dependent on artificial intelligence. Retailers using Mountain are also leveraging other capabilities to be able to drive success. And I've produced here just a short list. It's by no means exhaustive. Verified visits is a proprietary attribution model that's built for connected TV advertising, that's designed to uniquely show the impact in driving website traffic that we can attribute back to connected TV advertising, as opposed to things like paid search or social advertising or other channels. And so in that way, it's giving advertisers a real sense of clarity about, hey, I put this much money in to my Mountain campaign, and I'm seeing this much in the way of driving volume into my conversion engine, into my website, where I have a shot at selling them, and giving them that clarity and doing it quickly. Mountain Multi-Touch is a way for advertisers to drive more consumers deeper down the funnel. And so it does that by extending the campaign from connected TV, from the biggest screen in the house, to other devices in the home, like phones and tablets and computers. A/B testing is something that a lot of our retailer advertisers are doing more and more, and quite frankly, advertisers across multiple industries are doing. And the idea here is simply to say, hey, look, we can't just show up with one creative and let it roll for 6 months. Those days are behind us. They're showing up with 3, 4, 5 creatives, setting up tests to determine which ones perform best in which markets, and then heavying up the spend on those best performing creatives. And then affinity-based targeting just expands the tools that advertisers have for finding the right audience that's going to really help them scale. So we've talked a bit about how artificial intelligence is driving the fundamentals of media operations today. We've talked about the unique retail challenges and how these tools, and more importantly, the benefits of those tools, are helping retailers adjust to the climate in which they find themselves. I want to look ahead now to where do we see AI going? And specifically in our world, I get really excited about its movement towards creative and supporting the creative process. And that's so important because it's been the case for as long as I've been in business, and I think certainly still today, that one of the biggest blockers that advertisers have to being able to get on connected TV advertising is creative. It's being able to get TV ready, TV quality creative quickly and affordably. And they need, and you know, while they need it to get on connected TV nowadays, the capabilities, especially around A/B testing, mean that they really need to create more perhaps than they have in the past. And so there's a need for more volume, and with more video, not just in connected TV, but in social with places like TikTok and Instagram, boy, the demand for video and for creative is only going up. And here we think there's a role for AI to play as well. Now, the good news is that while AI is still developing in this space, advertisers already have access to creative solutions that can help to address some of these problems. QuickFrame by Mountain is a marketplace that brings together world-class video producers, strategists, editors, effects folks who can then get paired with brands and agencies who enter the marketplace. And the result is that those brands and agencies can find really terrific experts, in some cases very niche formats, like, you know, unboxing videos or UGC type videos that can meet an advertiser's particular need. And they can use QuickFrame to get those videos back from those world-class producers faster, with more volume, and more affordably than they can through traditional means. And that's available today. It's also the case that many advertisers working with Mountain are leveraging something called creative as a subscription, which allows those advertisers to get custom-made, really high-quality creative at no additional cost above and beyond their media investment, and to be able to get it regularly. So advertisers are using creative as a subscription to get all new ads every quarter. And that's important because I think as more and more advertisers have come to see through, especially digital and social, ad fatigue is a real thing. And so being able to head off ad fatigue by updating your creative proactively helps to avoid performance dips and keep growth going in a durable way. But let's get back to AI and where that's headed, we think, from a creative standpoint. I mean, certainly today, creatives are already using it to help to juice their process. Copywriters, for example, are going into ChatGPT to play around with different copy and to maybe reduce the risk of writer's block in creating ideas that they can use to then formulate their own ad copy. And then generative AI tools like Midjourney are enabling users to conjure up images that can serve into storyboards. And there are even tools that do this for video that can help to get those creative juices going. And the results are just extraordinary. Now, these creatives using these tools are able to produce really high quality, emotionally laden inspiration to help them bring their ideas to life. But I think it's also critical to recognize that this evolution in creative is not just a machine phenomenon. Boy, there's a big role for people to play. And I want to highlight a couple of those that stand out to me. I think about artificial intelligence limitations in the form of creative, and I think about where in the creative process is it really important that the human touch still prevails. And there are many examples of this, and I'm sure that many in the audience can think of their own, but I think of two. And the two that I think of tend to bookend the creative process in most experiences that I've had. So think about the creation of, or the development of, a creative brief, that template or blueprint that's going to be the canonical source of truth for the marketer, for a creative agency to go out and build that creative. In every experience that I've had for working on creative briefs, that process of generating the brief is thoughtful, it takes time. But one of the things that's been the most useful for me in the generation of those briefs is then the sharing of those briefs with a creative director who will be responsible for bringing together copywriter, the illustrators, and then ultimately the team that brings that video to life. The creative directors that I've worked with on these projects oftentimes push back and they ask and they probe about what is it that I want the viewers of my video to feel? What do we want them to do as a result of exposure to the video that I'm creating? And they might push back or challenge me on some of my assumptions. It's hard to imagine, at least as currently configured, that artificial intelligence would be able to bring the critical thinking that's required in order to generate those conversations, which ultimately result in a better brief. And a better brief usually results in a better video. Then we think about the back end of a project. So the brief has been done, production has started, production gets to a point where a video can result in a rough cut or an in-process, not yet quite final video ad. And it's time to review that ad. Artificial intelligence is not yet in a position to be able to look at that and say, and I'm grossly simplifying here, is it right? Meaning, among other things, is it right and authentic for the brand? Is it right for the target audience? Is it right considering the moment that we're in, things that might be going on in the broader world? Is it right considering what's happening competitively? Is it right for fidelity to how we want to represent ourselves in this ad? That takes critical thinking, that takes analysis and synthesis. And AI is not in a position to be able to do that and to be able to do it reliably. And for that reason, I think that artificial intelligence is today and likely to remain a powerful augmentation to what people deliver, but it can't replace every step of that end-to-end process for delivering great creative. Humans still have a big role to play. It also would be the case that it would be a mistake to pin everything on AI, to simply say, hey, boss, check, we've got AI, we're all set. Artificial intelligence on its own in the world of media operations or creative is simply not enough. Quite simply, the output of creative, whether it's, no matter how much AI may contribute to it or not, doesn't really make a difference unless you have the right place to place it, the right channel to funnel that ad or that creative to go deliver impact. You need the right platform, which needs its own sort of set of solutions to be able to execute and to be able to do it really well, really well. And of course, AI doesn't necessarily on its own bring a performance mindset. That has to be set and determined by the people who are creating the rules. So it's important, I think, for advertisers, regardless of whether they're focused more on the media operations aspect or on the creative aspect, to just remember that they've got a significant role to play in making sure that all of that great work that goes into planning, targeting, executing, and optimizing a campaign to be at its very best. In the meantime, Mountain Performance TV really brings together a lot of the very best of what AI can do in media operations, but also a lot of the other capabilities that I mentioned to drive those lower funnel outcomes. And here I've just got a sampling of some of the things that Mountain does and that retailers who are running on Mountain and that other advertisers running on Mountain are taking advantage of today. And I'll just speak to a few of these things. Living room quality, that's a term that we use to describe that high quality blue chip premium streaming publisher inventory that we tune into increasingly in our streaming choices. Being able to deliver a great ad in that great content we've seen time and again produces outsized results for our advertisers. I talked about verified visits, that proprietary attribution model that's built from the ground up for connected TV advertising to show how much credit you're getting from your CTV campaign compared to your other marketing investments. And Mountain offers an integration with Google Analytics so you can see those results right alongside the results that you're generating from your other channels. Mountain automatically optimizes campaigns as we go, so that once that campaign is live, you can count on the machines to really not only learn from your campaign, but learn from the thousands and thousands of thousands of campaigns that have run before from other advertisers to figure out what is the best path to the improvements that you want to see in those lower funnel results, website visits, revenue, return on ad spend. We talked about A/B testing. We talked about a bit about how we report and being able to get that reporting clearly and transparently and in real time. And then I think this last point about fast advertising is so important. We're operating in a time now where speed and time to market is so important. And so being able to move quickly but move with certainty is never been more valuable. And advertisers running on Mountain with performance TV are able to leverage that today. So let's wrap it up. Let's put a bow on this. 3 things that we talked about here, and I'll be eager to, we're in a minute here, we're going to open this up to questions, and I'll be eager to hear how the audience has reacted to this. But it is the case today that artificial intelligence and automation are already making a difference in the way that retailers market and advertise, specifically addressing those challenges of needing to drive customer acquisition / performance, needing to adjust to and accommodate more and more complex product lines to help to lower the risk of being overly dependent on one that may be impacted by supply chain disruptions, being able to provide that agility, that flexibility, that speed, and taking a lot of the drudgery out of the work. The AI and automation are doing that today. And as we look forward, as we start to peer ahead, we can see already how AI is changing the way that advertisers and agencies are going to think about creative, and using tools to augment the things they already do well to improve that creative. And those tools stand to take a lot of the cost and time out of how the creative is delivered, which should serve to meet the increased demands that not just retail marketers, but marketers of all kinds are going to have of video. And then third, and I can't stress this enough, because boy, there's a lot of chatter about AI in the mainstream and what it could or could not be, but there's a significant role for people to play. Human touch in creative and advertising matters now just as much as it ever did. And so humans aren't going away. They're going to absolutely be needed to get the most out of this capability. So that wraps up my part of this. I think now it's time to hear from you. And so we'll turn it over to questions. Christina, I'm hoping we have a few that are piling up.
Yeah, thank you, Matt, for that terrific discussion. So we do, as you said, have some time for questions. And again, as a reminder to everyone listening, you can submit these via the questions tab on the platform. And so let's see, we have a good question to start with is from Caroline. We are a smaller regional retailer, she says. Is there any benefit for us to use CTV, or should we wait to grow bigger first?
Great question, Caroline. And we hear that a lot. And it's an understandable question. I think there's a bit of a vestige there of cable and broadcast television, when very small number of advertisers could get on the air, and you'd have to show up with $1 million media budgets and maybe $1 million creative budgets. The good news is that's not the case anymore. Connected TV advertising's precision, the ability to reach and convert very specific audiences and to avoid waste, really enables advertisers to stretch their budgets much farther than they ever could. And so Mountain is seeing retailers come onto the platform and be able to test for low tens of thousands of dollars to launch a test campaign, and then get meaningful signal back about what's working, what creative is working best, what streaming networks are performing best, which audiences are delivering the best, and then be able to scale up their spend profitably and durably over time. So I think the broader answer is to this, the simple answer to this question is no, you don't need to wait. there are easy ways to explore what a test budget might entail, and then determine from there, how you might be able to go in and learn now about how connected TV advertising works, and maybe start to build some institutional knowledge in the process.
Wonderful. All right, and our next question is from Nick. He says, we're newish to CTV and struggling to keep up with the demands of ad creative. Do you have any tips for him?
Yeah, it's a great question, Nick, and it's a common one. Again, I think some of these questions we're hearing, Christina, are a bit of a, they are a legacy of the way television advertising has been done traditionally for decades. And Nick is speaking to that barrier that I mentioned earlier about, getting that ad creative that's TV quality, and being able to do it affordably, and to be able to get it updated on a regular basis. And I would say to Nick and to others who are considering this question to re-examine their approach to how they dream up and then produce and actually execute video in the first place. There are, first of all, many, many more video producers out there who are accustomed to being able to deliver a higher volume of ads faster and more affordably, so that they come right out of the bag. They come ready for A/B testing. And so, one tip would be to just peek your head up. And if you've been working with an agency, one particular agency for a long time, maybe it's time to either have a heart-to-heart conversation with that agency about, introducing some changes to the way that they operate and produce, or building out like a test creative budget with some new producers who have experience in the medium, and who, when you talk to them about, hey, we need to be able to do this at a different cost structure, we need to be able to do this at a different clock speed, or we need to be able to walk away from this engagement with more volume, they will have already experienced this. And I mentioned Quick Frame by Mountain. It's certainly not the only solution, but it's one that can help marketers find those experts who can make their dollars go farther. And also think about one other thing, which I forgot to mention, but I think is important, is also think about how they can take their investments in connected television advertising video and transfer them over to TikTok video or to Instagram video, or flip it around. Maybe the advertiser has Instagram video or TikTok video, and with just some relatively minor adjustments, that video might be ready to go on connected television advertising, and the right talent can help do that. So there are a lot of solutions for advertisers like Nick to be able to reimagine the creative process for connected TV. Great question.
Fantastic. And the next question that we have is from Bob, and he asks, can these AI tools be used to improve ad performance on other channels?
Yes, Bob, the answer is yes, they can. And what we're seeing from many advertisers is a learning sort of that cross-pollinates from connected TV into other channels. So, a sort of a generic example of this would be a retailer launches a campaign on connected TV advertising. They let it run. They learn which combination of creative and target audience produces the most website traffic back to their site. Advertisers are then taking that idea, that creative idea, that creative theme, and then they're bringing it over to their social video or their purely digital video and lighting it up there. And so in that sense, they're using CTV to save time and research costs to determine a winner, a creative winner that can then be redeployed across other channels to really amplify that message. So yeah, a lot of retail advertisers and advertisers generally are using CTV to improve their performance on other channels. That's a great question, Bob.
Wonderful. All right, and then from Isabel says, from a targeting perspective within CTV, knowing that it's mostly household level, do you see AI as being helpful within audience targeting or contextual targeting?
Yeah, that's a great question, Isabel. I think I think that the answer is yes. And I think, that what we will see over time is more and more certainty around being able to start making some educated assumptions about who within a household is watching based on the programming that they're seeing. So if more and more platforms are able to see patterns of viewing, and the easy example that comes to my mind is being able to suss out when kids programming might be on, and being able to know that and be able to see within the household that a steady stream of children's programming is being watched at a particular time of day, then it might be safe to assume that a kid is watching, or that a child is watching with a parent over the shoulder watching. And so being able to suss out those patterns within households is something that AI is, I think, very well positioned to be able to detect, and to be able to sort of ratchet up the refinement with which advertisers think about their deployment within household level targeting. That's a great question.
Wonderful. All right, and then the next question is from Marie, and she asks, what's the best way to keep up with all the advancements within this space?
Shameless plug would be to read Digiday. And others like it. Digiday, I will say, even before this association, Digiday, I've read a lot, and they produce really high quality work. But if you want to stay current, the resources that I go to do that include Ad Exchanger, which I read up a lot about. Benedict Evans produces a newsletter that's fantastic, and he's been writing an awful lot about AI recently. Media Post produces some great content that leans a little bit more to the media side as opposed to the creative or AI side, but there's some terrific content there. And then Mountain produces a handful of terrific content. We have a newsletter, weekly irregular polls that we put out to advertisers, and we publish those results for the community to be able to consume. And so there's just some of the sources that I rely on to sort of stay current. And it's more important than ever, right? I mean, and you guys know it on the Digiday/modern retail side of this, it's changing all the time. And so carving out 15, 20, 25 minutes every day to just read about what's happening in the industry is a pretty good and defensible use of time.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Wonderful. And let's see, we have another question from Viviana, and she asks, how can retailers better leverage on AI when building their own retail media networks?
Ooh, that's a good question. Viviana, thank you for asking that. I mean, I think the retail media networks I think of as being a really important both providing an inventory component to advertising that may not otherwise be present within what we think of as a traditional DSP or demand side platform, but it also can expose really compelling audience and audience behavior information. And so my thought here is that a lot of the same mechanics that artificial intelligence is executing in places like connected TV, but also in places like paid social and search, can be certainly brought to bear to start to develop those algorithms, those rules and processes for governing what retail inventory are we going to surface rather to which customers, depending on their profile, whether it's their previous behavior or their affinities, their likes or their interests. So to me, I think one of the benefits that I think folks who are exploring the retail media space will have is that it's a relatively new inventory source that's now coming online at scale. I think I saw today, it's not quite, maybe we don't think of it exactly as Uber, but like or retail, but Uber's advertising business is now over $500 million annually, which is just tremendous. But my point is that retail media networks can leverage, I think, a lot of the technology and know-how that's already been created and be able to plug that in, because a lot of that is already sort of solved science, if you will. And so those solutions are going to be available. More people are going to know how to bring them to life. I think it's just a matter of kind of taking this new way of advertising with retail media becoming available and plug it into a familiar framework. like, connected television or digital video and bringing it to life. But there's no reason in my mind why it can't be done very seamlessly.
Makes sense. Great. And then we have one question from Katie, and she asks, what warnings would you give to advertisers regarding this new wave of tech? How do I know if someone's trustworthy?
Yeah, Katie, that's a great question. There are a lot of ways to determine overall trustworthiness of a partner. Certainly, there are review sites that are available where prospective users of a particular technology can go to read about other experiences, and that's generally a helpful starting point. Reading case studies to get a sense of the experience that others have had, I think, is useful, not just for reading a case study, because case studies are actually, pretty universally positive. Otherwise, the solution provider wouldn't publish it. But when you see especially branded case studies, you can, you can see that there's a real brand behind it. You can ask prospective providers for a reference. Ask to speak to someone about the experience that they've already had, and sharing what did they learn, what they might do differently if they had a time machine and can go back and start all over again. Those are all things that I encourage people who are looking at Mountain to do, but also people who are looking at any new platform or technology to do, to make sure that what they're seeing is legit. And then, of course, there's, you asked a moment ago a question, I forget from whom, about how to keep up with the space. There are a lot of organizations, the Interactive Advertising Bureau, the IAB, the Association of National Advertisers, or the ANA, are two trade organizations that publish extensively on efforts to improve trust and transparency in our industry. So staying close to what they produce and the knowledge that they're sharing, as well as some of the risks that they expose, are great ways of being able to approach this with some more comfort and confidence.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's all the questions that we have. So I think that will wrap it up there. So thank you so much, Matt, for your insights today. And I'd like to thank everyone for listening and for submitting questions. So yeah, thank you so much and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Christina. Thanks, gang.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.